So welcome, everyone. As you just saw from that brief conversation with Grady, we were supposed to be learning a little bit about STEM Push today, and there's a couple of things going on that have caused that to have to move a little bit. Unfortunately, Grady didn't know. I now owe him and Kate coffee or something stronger, but we will figure that out soon, and then hopefully next month, just so you have a little bit of an idea of why Grady was here, so you can kind of look forward to that hopefully next month. We are engaged in Cleveland in an organization called STEM Push out of Pitt. And STEM Push takes STEM pre-college programs and accelerates their reach and their ability, puts them as part of a community of practice, gets them accredited through middle states, and then works with them to work with admissions offices so that those admissions offices and universities will consider participation in this program as a big benefit to student applicants. The kind of long and the short of it is that Pitt discovered that some really, really high caliber and brilliant young people were applying for STEM majors, but they were attending less than stellar high schools, and so they weren't even really being considered. So they're trying to determine other pathways for students who go to high schools that maybe aren't as famous as, a Hawken or an HB or something along those lines, and give them the same kind of leg up into getting into these programs, all as a part of broadening participation in STEM, which really kind of leads into a big part of our conversation today as well. So look forward to that next month. Kind of related to that, if you are part of a STEM pre-college program that has certain criteria, it's high school students leading them into college, has around 110 or more contact hours with a student over their participation in the program. And that can be, an intensive 3 weeks, or it can be, a couple hours a week all year long. Any of those types of things are fine. If you know a program like that, please make sure to reach out. Here in a minute, I'll put my email in the chat in case you don't have it. But that really gets to this whole concept of broadening participation. How do we make sure that young people are seeing people who look like them in positions of power, positions of knowledge, positions of responsibility? And how do we increase participation in STEM-focused majors and career paths by students of color, students of poverty, LGBTQ students, really everyone who doesn't look like, well, me. Everyone who doesn't look like me, where there are enough of me in that world. So welcome, everyone. It's August. It's hot. It's humid. My kids are at the pool right now. I wish I was with them. We wake up in the morning. The sun is shining. The pavement's dry. Somehow everything else is wet. We're in the dog days of summer. For many of us, dog days of summer mean one thing. It's back to school season. New school supplies. We just spent, I don't know, $4,500 on pencils and erasers at Target the other day for my kids. New markers, crayons, pencil boxes, notebooks, all of those ideas. And we're going back to school too here in NeoSTEM. As many of you know, our good friend Milani Labat-Joseph spent an extraordinary amount of time interviewing more than 150 professionals, community leaders, and other stakeholders to create a landscape assessment of the diversity and equity in Northeast Ohio STEM, in the Northeast Ohio STEM community. John's going to put that link in the chat. Make sure, I think a lot of you have already downloaded this report and read it. Please, please, please make sure to do so if you hadn't. This is our incredibly powerful report centered right here in our community and in our focus area. And I think that you can expect this report to help drive the vision of NeoSTEM over the coming year and years. So your knowledge of that report is only going to help in that work. Her report is titled Toward Greater Equity in Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, and it identifies a lot of the challenges our community faces in improving educational equity for Black and Brown students, and sets out a series of recommendations for increasing equity. We're talking about a lot of different things. We unpack everything I just said. There's a whole lot to make that happen. We're talking about addressing basic problems, STEM awareness, transportation, a lack of basic living needs, some of the soft and more refined topics, seizing and cultivating opportunities to connect, developing better evaluative steps, using data strategically to make programs better and more powerful. But overall, Milani's report sheds light on the different ways we're missing the mark as a community on increasing diverse representation in STEM. And to be very clear, there are some incredible exemplars in her report as well. What we're talking about are these growth points, but that the report is not all, doom and gloom, nothing's going well. There's some really great exemplars that can give you lessons in your organization about how you can improve these things. But we also need to, at the same time that we celebrate the strides and the successes that NeoSTEM and all of your individual organizations have had over the last year or two, we all have to keep reminding ourselves that the work is far, very, very far from being done. And this report is giving us a framework for thinking about and addressing those challenges. So, Milani, first of all, incredible, incredible work. I know John asked you to talk at length today, and you weren't prepared for that today, but don't think, I'm calling you out. I'm calling you out on this because I want you to be aware that that's a short-term get out of the meeting card, because I know that everybody in this organization wants to really dig into this report in a deep way with you. So start thinking about ways we can make that happen.
Yeah, Jeremy, I just want to say, yes, no, I'm more than happy to talk about it, but I got to get a little more time in.
Oh yeah, to be very clear, in Milani's defense,
so I am happy to discuss and dissect the report.
Apologize for cutting you off. You cut out there for a second. I thought you were done. Yes, in Milani's defense, she was asked like 11 minutes ago to do this. So this is not Milani skirting out of these things. It's a pretty reasonable delay of game. All right, so over the past couple of years, we've heard from many of you, and we've reached the conclusion that NeoSTEM's driving goal for now and into the near future should be to improve educational opportunities for all students. And in Cleveland, that particularly means students of color. It doesn't mean exclusively students of color. As I mentioned before, we're also looking at focusing on young women and LGBTQ youth and all of those things. But our biggest need in this region is closing this gap for students of color. So Milani's report raises a really big question. And that question is, how do we get people to care? All of you care. Well, I assume. Either you care or you're good at faking it. But I think all of you care. Probably your colleagues care. But when we start to expand beyond that into organizations that perhaps are politically different than we are, who have motivations that are different than we are, organizations whose hearts are in the right place in general, they're just not thinking about this stuff yet. There's a lot of people out there who don't care. I want to be very clear that I don't mean that all of those people don't care in the sense of like, I don't care, whatever. They don't, there are some of those. They don't care. A lot of the people, though, don't care just in the sense of like, it's just not on their radar. It's not something that they're thinking about. It's not something they know how to address. It's not something they think they can address. That's the issue that I run into sometimes. I want to make change. I care from that perspective, but I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do and not come off as, as someone with a white savior complex. To call a spade, which I actually am now thinking, like, is that even a racist comment? It might be. I am a cisgendered, straight, white man who grew up in an upper middle class family with a father as an attorney and a mother as a CPA. And I don't have this experience in order to really make a difference without help of this organization and people who are smarter than me. So that's what we want to talk about a little bit today. We're going to talk about some other things at the end, some of the programming that's coming up. We're going to talk about the CHIPS Act that was just signed into law over the weekend. We're going to talk really briefly about that, and I'm going to let you know about some opportunities that are coming up in the very short term that have to do with the CHIPS Act that are very, very exciting. And another piece of information about the CHIPS Act that is incredibly powerful and exciting for ecosystems. But first, we want to talk about these issues that Milani's report identified. How do we get people to care about the issues to begin with? How do we talk to the rest of the world? What's our elevator pitch? And how do we make change here in Cleveland? So I'm gonna, in a rare case of being quieter than normal, take a little bit of a backseat and ask John and Ebony to share a bit about the conversation that they just had and to continue that conversation with all of us. John, Ebony?
Ebony, you want to kick us off, or you want me to start?
Go ahead, pop on in.
All right, well, so this is a little different. Basically what you guys are seeing right now is a conversation that Ebony and I started at a park bench in Peninsula at about 10 o'clock this morning. And we were talking about Milani's report and going through it and sort of and looking at all of the different, like, you know, the weaknesses that she's identified, like the deficits in the community, the recommendations and so forth. But it sort of gave rise to this larger conversation of, well, this is all presupposing that people care to begin with. And we know that within our community, with all the people that are here, with the people we work with every day, we know those people care. Like we're invested, we have ideas, we want to do better. But that's a relatively small portion of the population. There's a whole lot of people out there that at worst don't care, more realistic, they're just indifferent, or maybe it's like a point of ignorance or something like that. And it gave birth, and so this conversation sort of gave rise to this larger thing of, okay, so, well, how do we talk about this? How do we get people to care about the issue of diversity in the workforce, diversity and equity in education? How do we make these things relevant for people that just otherwise might not know any better, or it's just not on your radar? And, you know, we're coming from a place of like not trying to judge too much and judge too harshly, because there's a whole lot of different reasons why it might not be on your radar. But it does beg the question of, what do we do as a community, as an ecosystem? How can we better reach out and have those conversations? How do we better reach out? And like Jeremy said, what's our elevator pitch? You know, it's a trope. Everybody's got like the weird uncle at Thanksgiving. Like, what do you tell that guy? What do you tell the next door neighbor that, you know, grew up a certain way, might be, you know, of a particular age, whatever, but this is just not something that comes into their wheelhouse or something that comes into their line of thinking. How do you get those people to understand what it is we're trying to do, and really why the very basic question of why is equity and why is diversity so important? And so that's where the conversation started. And then a very important caveat came, which is, and just to say it's because it's the decent thing to do, that's not a good enough answer. That answer is not going to work. And so we started just talking about this and thinking about this and thinking, okay, well, like, so how do we stress the importance of diversity? We all kind of like know it, sort of, right, in our bones, and like we kind of feel it, right? But if someone asks you, why is equity in education important? Why is diversity important to a society? Like, do you have those 4 or 5 points lined up, ready to go? Like, a lot of us don't. And so we sort of started talking about that, and then just got to a broader conversation, just talking about race. And, you know, Jeremy talked about it. I feel the same way. Like it's difficult to talk about race. And I think that, I mean, for people in my position, people in Jeremy's position, you know, it's not that we don't want to, it's we don't know how. And so that's where the conversation stopped. And we both kind of looked at each other and said, this is going to make for a fantastic NeoSTEM meeting here in a few hours. Let's open this conversation up and just like ask people and say, okay, like, look, we got a group of people that are here because we're all thinking the same thing. We're all basically in line. So let's just have this conversation and just start talking, because we know that complacency isn't going to get us anywhere. We know that not talking about it's not going to get us anywhere. So how do we go about having these conversations? Ebony, please, I don't want to talk anymore. I already feel super weird about this.
Well, okay. I'll first go, I'll start out by saying that I know that we record NeoSTEM meetings, but if we're going to like kind of trail down this, you know, path a little bit or dance in it, that I would like to stop the recording. because I just think it's fair to everyone who's on this call for like a subject like this. I don't think we're quite ready for it. So yeah, so I'll first ask that. Like,
all right. So before we continue on, I was just about to say, Lauren, will you go ahead and hit that record button? So those of you who are watching the recording, that might have been a tiny bit confusing, but as Ebony just shared, and you didn't hear, we're talking about some heavy things, and we want to make sure people feel comfortable in order to start having those conversations. And there are things that we need to be saying louder and more frequently, but as we get people used to it and ready and to learn all of the ins and outs of how to appropriately have these conversations, we want to give people that space. So welcome back, those of you who are here listening to the recording. All right. So it has been a really incredible week for STEM learning ecosystems and the STEM learning ecosystems community of practice, which I think all of you know, but I'll say anyway, in case you don't. The STEM learning ecosystems community of practice is the big international overarching organization that sort of certifies and oversees and brings together all of the various ecosystems in the United States and abroad. So it was a very big week for those folks because STEM ecosystems were singled out in the new $52 billion CHIPS and Science Act, which was signed into law Saturday to strengthen the economy by fostering innovation, research, and development. Ecosystems will be eligible to apply for funding from NSF for a new K-12 STEM grant program that scales up best practices in STEM throughout new NSF-funded centers. And I was just really quickly texting with Jan Morrison because I couldn't find the number. And so here's what she told me. And this is why this is exciting. So of that $52 billion bill and appropriation, let me find this again, 36 billion of that is scheduled to be added to the existing NSF baseline, which brings NSF's funding to a total of $81 billion for the next 5 years, which is, I believe, the most funding that NSF has ever had to give away and to give to organizations. What's even more exciting about that, in my opinion, is that only certain organizations will be eligible to apply for this funding. One of those organizations is universities. One of those organizations is collaborative groups of existing organizations who are working together to make change. So that's really great that, we fit the bill there, and is very exciting. But even more exciting is in that definition of who should apply, STEM learning ecosystems were specifically cited. Now, that doesn't go as far as what we were all kind of hoping 6 months ago, that some of this money was going to be earmarked only for ecosystems. That would have been great, but baby steps. Ecosystems, in short, have a pretty strong leg up to apply for and receive this funding. So here's what we know so far. I've heard, though I can't confirm it yet, that this is the largest funding the National Science Foundation has ever received through a bill. Only certain organizations are eligible to apply for this funding, and the one specific organization that was called out is STEM Learning Ecosystems Community of Practice. And finally, to tie things back to our conversation today, broadening participation in STEM is a huge, huge driver for the National Science Foundation. And we are hearing that driver is going to continue and perhaps even be more heavily focused on in the RFP for these funds. So stay tuned for more. Take a look at the CHIPS information that John is going to put in the chat right now. And maybe more importantly, if you're available this Thursday, consider joining the SLE COP webinar, where we'll begin finding ways to collaborate across the country on some of these applications. That's what we're hearing is going to be our biggest shot, is that we're talking about a STEM ecosystem, which is called out, and we're talking about multiple ecosystems working together to replicate and expand efforts that are shown to be successful. So that's a big part of these drivers. And what we're going to be doing this webinar Thursday is the first half of the webinar is going to be set up as kind of a wrap up of the convening that some of you were able to attend, but not all of you. It's going to have a couple of, there'll be, I think, 5 or 6 different breakouts for like 5 or 6 minutes. You'll be able to go to 2 of those, and it'll be talking about some of the learning. And then we're going to shift over to a conversation with James Brown, who's a policy analyst that the ecosystems partner with a lot. And he's going to be talking about the ways that the things you just discussed in the first half or other things that you know about can be codified in order to apply and have a better than average likelihood of receiving funding in the new CHIPS Act funding. So this is really, really exciting. Listen, it's a lot of money. A lot of people are going to apply for this work. So we're all going to need, if we want it, if any of you want it, I know I want it. I know a lot of people want it. Our best chance is to come together to learn about things that have been effective and to use this money to spread and grow those effective strategies. So without knowing what I'm talking about, I see a world where the NeoSTEM folks are involved in sort of two ways. Way number one is if we can find other ecosystems who want to replicate some of the work that NeoSTEM has done, I Am STEM, Wired, and so forth, then all of you and the NeoSTEM team can be part of receiving some of that funding to help them with that implementation. And then on the other side, we want to learn about the great programming that's happening in other cities around the country and other regions around the country, figure out what makes sense for Cleveland's goals, because we don't want to be shoehorning in garbage, finding out what actually helps us get to our goals, and working together to receive some funding to implement those programs. So that's kind of our loose hope. We'll know more over the coming weeks, and you'll be able to hear more about all of that. We'll make sure in the follow-up email from this, from today, that both Milani's link for comment on her report is included, as well as the registration link here in case you missed it. But go ahead and click on that now. Pass it along to folks in your organizations if you know people who might be interested in beginning to collaborate. Our very strong hope is that we leave this webinar on Thursday with some groups kind of formed who have some next steps about meeting and actually getting this work together. All right, so that's my update. Continuing with our theme of back to school preparations, Ebony and John have a couple of quick updates over the next 5 minutes for us on our programming and upcoming events. Ebony, I understand we're taking over a couple of rec centers in Cleveland next week. Tell me what's going on.
So excited. So we're doing a STEM exploration. There we go. Sorry. STEM exploration next week at 2 City of Cleveland Recreation Centers next Wednesday and Thursday. First one will be at Lonnie Burton. The second one will be at Zone Rec. And we are super excited to activate these spaces with STEM activity. You all know how rec centers are. You know, you might see like someone doing basketball, you know, hooping, different things like that. But imagine going by and you're like, wait, they're over there dissecting. Who has robotics out? Who's over here fabbing? This is crazy. So that's what we will be doing in the City of Cleveland Rec Centers, and we are so excited about it. If you can come out and join us, that would be fantastic. Noon to 4, both of those days. Of course, we'll have a full report and pictures to share with everyone about this opportunity. And the long-term vision is to bring that around like tenfold. So imagine all the centers being activated with like STEM activities going on. That would be like the win in my eyes. All of our centers, rec centers, community centers, libraries, you know, just to walk in the door and just see like youth and families in action. That's my long-term vision. John, what else?
Thank you, Ebony. This is exciting stuff, and we can tell you that the city's original request and proposal was that we do this in every rec center across the city, and our response was amazing, but no. We need to pilot this. That you're talking about 4 weeks from now. But what's exciting about that is that next summer, I do think that there is a very strong likelihood and possibility that if we want to, that we could run this in as many as all, whatever it is, 45 or 50 or whatever it is, rec centers. And what I love about it is that that would give us the opportunity to still have our huge Cavs event, and then to have these smaller ones that could be more focused on kind of themes and ideas, so we could have you know, telecommunications as one of the themes, and Verizon could be there, and whatever our other partners we could find, and we could have kind of activities and lessons specifically around that. And I'm looking at Lisa's background and thinking, you know, maybe we could figure out a way to partner with the Rock Hall and have a science of music center, and that's what we do in that center. So it really is an exciting opportunity for all of us. John, I know you have some updates for us as well.
Just real quick, because it's the new month, of course, I'm going to talk about Wired again. but this time, so just to give everyone a heads up, we've got a new cohort starting for Wired. It's actually the first of 2 cohorts that are being funded by Martha Holden Jennings Foundation. The first is this fall. It goes from October 4th to November, I believe, 15th, and then there's a following one for the spring. The reason that I bring this up, and I know that I think I've talked with everybody on this call about Wired at some point. Last week, Ebony and I had the opportunity to go and see presentations from CSU's web course students. This was a group of, I don't know, like 30 kids, if you're not familiar with it, that had basically done the Wired program on their, not on their own, but in the context of CSU, where they did work and design websites for mock clients that were provided to them. We did some recruiting there, and we're happy to say, so we've got room for 20 students per cohort. That's basically full for this fall. And it's full of all of those students that are applicants that want to continue that work. So I bring that up to say, and I know she's not on the call, but I give a big shout out to Chelsea Cohn for hooking us up with this and introducing us to this opportunity, because we're really, really excited about this crop of really like motivated, smart. These are exactly the kind of students that we want for this program. And so we're there, like we've got the talent ready to go. We have room for 10 businesses, and we're actually early on our timeline in terms of when we're supposed to start recruiting. It's not supposed to start for a couple of weeks. We want to do it now because we're that excited. We've got room for 10 businesses to participate in this. And I mean that in the broadest sense of the term. It's open to small business owners. It's open to community organizations. It's open to churches. Milani, if you would like a website for transformative innovations, perhaps we could make that happen. It's really open to anyone that wants to expand their presence online. And we want to match students up with business owners that will care about them, that will put the time in to give a little bit of that mentorship and to talk about their experience in being entrepreneurs and so forth. So that's a heads up. I'm going to throw an application, a link real quick. You'll see this link, much more again from me specifically over the next couple of weeks. Lisa Mack, looking at you, I know like we got to talk about this too. But the reason that I wanted to talk about today is because I'm really, really excited about the group of students that I think we're going to be bringing in here. And it's a genuinely good opportunity for business owners, for organization heads to get some really good work and to give a little bit back and give some of these high school, juniors and seniors a really good experience as they finish their high school career out and off to college or wherever else they're going to go. So that's my plug. You'll see it all again in the mailings that are coming up soon, but I just wanted to give everybody a heads up now.
Well, John, thank you so much. And that brings us to the end of our time today. Remember a couple of things: August 10th and 11th, next Wednesday and Thursday, we'll be at the Lonnie Burton and Michael Zone Rec Centers. And we'd love for you to stop by, bring your kids. We really want to show up for the city, to show the administration what this community is all about. And we want to see you there. STEM activities for kids of all ages, food trucks. It'll be a really great time. I'd also, before we go, I'd like to congratulate NeoSTEM participant and Milani Labat Joseph's daughter, Layla, on her white coat ceremony. Congratulate your daughter for us, Milani. We're very excited for her. Ebony, I saw you raising your hand there for a second. You have something else you want to share? That was a wave. That was a goodbye. Well, thanks, everyone. And we will see you all next time.